everybody, happy Sunday. I hope that wherever you are and whatever you are doing, you are having an amazing weekend. If you haven't already, go check out the chicken and garden update, in which case I'm talking about naughty chickens that escape. I'm talking about all the tomatoes that the garden is producing in the greenhouse right now, and all of the lovely apples that I've been able to pick. But that's not what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about energy consumption, or rather being cognizant of how much carbon dioxide is going into the energy that you are using in your home. Now, as you know, probably, I have quite a high-tech system in my house. I have the Ford vehicle-to-home backup system. I also have the span panel, neither of which are working 100% right now. Joke is on me, I guess. But I also run Home Assistant in my house, and there are a couple of open source projects that allow me to track the carbon dioxide emissions of the local electrical grid where I live, and that allows me to make informed decisions about how much electricity I'm going to consume and when and where I'm going to consume that. And I'm curious to see if other people do that. Do you know what the current grid output is where you live in terms of carbon dioxide? I know that some of the people who watch this in the UK, they've got some great tools in the UK that allow you to be pretty granular about the carbon footprint of the national grid in the UK. And in the last couple of months, the national grid in the UK has just got greener and greener and greener. The carbon footprint of the UK just keeps dropping. And I'm actually kind of jealous, because the kind of figures that I'm now seeing on average in the UK, they're not even achievable on a good day in much of the US. Our grid here in the US, even in the Pacific Northwest, where our grid is inherently much greener than in other parts of the US, is still really, really dirty if you compare it with much of Europe. So I am curious, if you are someone who just goes, you know what, I've got solar panels on the roof of my home, or maybe I've got a Powerwall or some other energy storage product, and I can just store energy that I generate on the roof of my home and then consume it when I want. Or maybe you're someone who goes, you know what, I might have solar panels on the roof of my home, but I'm still going to make sure that when I'm using electricity, I'm using it responsibly and I'm not wasting energy, and also I'm not consuming power that is directly connected to high carbon footprint generation. Peaker plants are a good example. When you have a peak time period where energy is at high demand, especially in the winter, especially in hot days in the summer, people come home from school or work or whatever, and they're putting on their air conditioning, or they're putting on their stoves, or they're turning up the heat in their homes. That can actually have a really big carbon impact. Now, I'm going to be honest, sometimes I do try and consume power in a sensible way. I may delay charging of my EVs until I know the grid carbon output is lower. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just want to turn that power on and use it. And one of the things I'm trying to do more of is to use smart home technology to just remind me when the carbon dioxide emissions from the electricity I'm using is pretty high. Even though I have 15 kilowatts of solar array here at the house, our net energy use is higher than the electricity that we generate, because we just have all of the stuff here that you would normally put in a business that's actually running at my house, like the servers and stuff. I've talked about that a lot before. I know a lot of cars that are coming to market now have a feature that allows you to say, hey, only charge the car when the grid emissions is below a certain amount. Do you make use of that? Or are you someone who's like, no, I want my car to be charged and ready to go when I leave? Obviously, if you live in an area that could potentially be hit by a disaster, whether that's a flood, a fire, earthquake, there is some benefit to having that car ready to go in the case of an emergency. And I must admit, here at the Pacific Northwest, we live in an area where there's lots of fire risk. We live in an area where there's a lot of earthquake risk. Having some charge in the car's battery pack is something that I consider to be essential. And two of the charging stations we've got 4 charging stations here, I've actually got 5, but 2 of our charging stations have a function that allows me, when I come back, I go, okay, I want you to put 10 kilowatt hours in or 5 kilowatt hours in of power, regardless of when I plug in. And then beyond that, charge the car when it's green. And like I said in previous videos on the main channel, I can automate that a little bit so that I can restrict the charge rate when the carbon footprint of the grid is really bad. and then I can increase it when my solar panels are producing excess energy. I know it's incredibly nerdy, so I'm trying to get a gauge of how many people watching this actually bother and how many people just go, oh, it's electricity, I'm doing a good thing, I've got an electric car, or I've got solar panels, or I've got an energy storage product. That is where I'm stopping at that point. I don't need to worry beyond that. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And I would also be curious as to whether you check on the carbon footprint of your local grid. Do you even have an idea, on average, how many grams of CO2 are emitted for every kilowatt hour of electricity that is consumed on average in your neighbourhood or through your utility company? What green generation mix does your local utility have? I know in some areas where the grid is massively connected, it's hard to pinpoint that down, but you can have a rough guess, I guess. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As you will note, we've got some things changing on the channel in the coming weeks and months, but I do want to say thank you to the amazing people who have signed up to support Transport Evolved in the last couple of weeks at the $1, $2, $3 per month kind of level. We have over 150,000 subscribers on the main channel. If just 1% of our 1% more, so we've currently got 1% of our viewers subscribe and support us through Patreon. If we increase that by another percent, so 2% of our total audience subscribed and supported us through Patreon, we'd actually be doing really well, and we'd be able to do more trips, we'd be able to do more events, we might be able to buy vehicles like we'd love to do like a Nissan Leaf, buy a Nissan Leaf and run it as a vehicle to home system, or do some tests on it. But we can't do stuff like that because you just can't finance it in terms of how much money we have available to spend on things. We've got a project vehicle coming. Nearly said what it was. I'm not going to say until I absolutely know for sure that it's happening. We do have another vehicle coming that it's cost me personally very little. And so that's going to be a new source of videos. But we'd love to do more of that. And of course, having a little bit of extra free cash from Patreon donations does help a lot. So thank you to those of you who have this past week stepped up to the plate, because YouTube ad revenue, I mean, YouTube's basically stopped advertising or stopped giving us money from adverts, or, okay, I'm being a bit hyperbolic. It stopped spending, it stopped giving us as much money from ads as it used to. It's not putting ads on our videos as much, because it's putting ads on channels that are spouting nonsense, often about Elon Musk, which I find that disturbing, but obviously that's not your fault, and I guess it's just the algorithm doing the algorithm thing. Anyway, on that note, we are done with today's video. If you have comments, you can drop them in the comments section below. You can reach out to us on the Discord chat room. You can reach out to us on Mastodon. Or if you are a Patreon supporter, you can leave a comment there if you want to leave that comment to a smaller group of people. If you want more, you can subscribe, hit the bell, and follow the links below to regularly support us with a YouTube membership or a Patreon subscription. And you will also find links below to our Ko-fi, Bitcoin, and Swag store, as well as that aforementioned Mastodon server. We are changing how we're going to be reading our credits out moving forwards. Eventually, we're going to set it up so that we actually say thanks to the new Patreon supporters. So I'm just kind of preparing you and warning you that that is going to change a little bit in the future. But if you are a Patreon supporter and you have supported us, as usual, thank you so much for making what we do more possible and more sustainable, because it's been some really challenging times in the last few weeks. And thank you to those of you who went to Fully Charged Live and bought a ticket with our referral code, because that really helped as well. Don't forget that we make videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday on our main channel. Plus on a Sunday, you'll find me over here on Take Two talking about chickens and gardens, which hopefully you've already watched. If not, go watch it next. And the Sunday Musing, which obviously today was all about the fun stuff. My wife is just about to drive off in her Bolt. I have no idea where she's going, but if you hear a weird noise, that's what that is. Anyway, next week we've got some great content lined up for you on the main channel. Stay safe, have a great weekend, and until next time, keep evolving.